far impact exists in the room, all of their claims assume that it's outside of the room. They're going to have to prove that the round changes of the way in which their framework, or the way in which the debate community interacts and increases their policy making by their ability to connect to policy making. Nothing actually happens when nothing actually happens. When I was talking about how my grandfather couldn't imagine himself outside of the situation, this was a performative way of making arguments, a way in which we can never imagine ourselves out of our subject location, because we are already ingrained in the experiences through the way in which that alters and changes the way in which we reason, the way in which we make decisions. When they came up and read the one, they were clearly already speaking from their subject location. So when they called us to not speak from that location via their framework arguments, they were saying that they were basically saying, no, our subject location is the right one, the normal one, therefore yours is disposable and therefore should not be considered. This was the same argument that Anna was making when she was discussing her story with community and how her grandfather, because he owned and because his land was different than the other people and he was considered a kulaks, he was literally casted outside. He was driven to the point where he could not understand the situation. When I made the argument about Trujillo and how Trujillo and the story of the dictator and how he traumatized someone's existence and called them into imagination. They were calling us into this imagination where we are already in our subject location. We can never unimagine ourselves out of this ideological predispositions that we have based on the experiences of our people in our subject location only. Look. Basically, I've been making all these arguments performatively through the story. This is the way, the fact that they don't see the arguments and the fact that they don't see that these are responses is indicative of the way in which they see their subject location as the only one that is natural. These arguments have all been made in the story. Just look at your flow, the way in which my grandfather could not imagine himself outside of the violence, how he could never move beyond this. The use of English, also their use of English is a violent universalization. Debaters don't ever reflect or consider the fact that somebody may not speak out of English. This is that same form of universalization that we were speaking about. Our performance throughout the debate has the symbolic interruption, the universalization of the debate community. The use of English is non-neutral. This is in this round we are interrupting that universalization, that form of violence that constituted people's disposability. The use of English is non-neutral, rather it is an imperialistic opposition, because this particular violence, especially in the communicative aspect of the debate where you just assume a particular ideal. They said before that we spoke English to them, in Spanish. There was already this idea that everyone that looks at the case list already speaks in English. This happened before we even interacted in the debate phase. All of these arguments are not new. They were already implied through our performance. This is the way in which we communicate from our subject location. They communicate in that direct way, but I come from roots where I communicate via a performance, via storytelling. This is the way in which I change and I rupture and interrupt that form of debate. The fact that they would try to talk about the U.S. and EU relations without understanding what it means to have grown up in Europe as an example, where the way in which they universalize politics globally, yet this action has no chance of producing change. It assumes that the world we don't exist in and is in the debate around, and they say that we need to talk about politics and real world change. When they say talk about politics, I mean we need to talk about their subject location. This argument was clearly made and performatively conceded because they did not answer that we are already speaking from our position. So when they say we need to talk about politics, they're saying we need to talk from our subject location, i.e. theirs, which is inherently violent based on the stories that I told about how the Haitians could not ever become the real Dominicans because they could not say the word particularly right. They could not roll their R in the word partially in Spanish. The way in which they roll their R is the same way in which their subjecthood influence the way in which they engage with that. The same way in which I cannot engage with policymaking in the same fashion that they do and speak from their subject location. They say that they need to save these lives. All of their impact calculus doesn't make any sense. The ballot is about what happens in this round of performance. If you think that we're right and that the arguments on subject location are right, they're not arguments on subject location are right, then you need to vote for the negative ballot. All their permutation arguments assume that the subject location can be completely consumed and taken in. The fact that they would make this argument argument is indicative of the way in which they universalize and try to consume everything. They made an argument about they try to consume everything and leave it as disposable. They made an argument on bare life, but their second argument from the winning arts compares the people that they're killing to bare life, so that means it's applicable to both of us. I don't need to do much work here. They say that the Haitian Revolution equals universalization. Just because the Haitians identify with themselves, it doesn't mean that it's a good thing. Now, all their personal experience arguments at the bottom of the flow don't make any sense in the context that we are winning, that we are already speaking from our subject location, and that this speaking from the subject location is inherently violent. Even though they didn't go for any of their framework arguments, they are still going to lose on that call to speak from their subject location, because we're winning that it's inherently violent. None of their framework arguments can ever trump the fact that we cannot move in that subject location the same way they do, because we're influenced already by ours, and it's already ideologically grounded in a particular direction. They say that they reduce that they solve for inclusion. Look, all of those discussions are outside of the round. Fiat is completely fake. That is a illusion of their subject location. They are going to have to win that they have made arguments about how we can escape our subject location before they get any access to those rounds, to anything outside of the round. And they did not extend any framework arguments, so that means that there is no possibility that they can come back and assume that their agency is something that should be respected and brought to. Jim Schultz, look at me. I understand that you did not understand this argument at the beginning, but it's a clear revelation of how performance works.
Yeah.